In the quiet sanctity of New Jerusalem Baptist Church, Pastor Douglas White Sekru stood as a pillar of his community, his sermons resonating with promises of faith and unwavering commitment. To his congregation, he was a beacon, and to his devoted wife, Dana, soon to be a mother, he was her world. Yet, beneath this veneer of piety, a secret festered, a deception so profound it would shatter lives and unleash a storm of vengeance. Pastor Douglas White, too, a man whose smile could charm the staunchest skeptic, lived a life outwardly dedicated to God and his beloved wife Dana. Dana, with her gentle spirit and radiant, pregnant glow, saw only the devoted husband and future father in Doug. Her world revolved around the impending arrival of their son, a symbol of their perfect, blessed life. Unbeknownst to Dana, another woman, Marcy, a vibrant member of the church choir, carried a similar secret. Her pregnancy, too, was a direct consequence of Doug's clandestine affections. Marcy's best friend, Cindy, a woman with a pragmatic heart and observant eyes, had long harbored suspicions. She often questioned Marcy, her voice laced with concern. "Marcy, how long can you keep this hidden? And more importantly, how long will you let him keep Dana in the dark?" Cindy asked one afternoon, as they sat in Marcy's modest living room, a half-knitted baby blanket draped over Marcy's swollen belly. Marcy, however, clung to Doug's whispered promises like a lifeline. "He loves me, Cindy. He truly does. He's going to leave Dana," he swore it. Her eyes, usually so sharp, softened with a desperate hope. She saw a future, a life with Doug and their child, a life that justified the secrecy, the stolen moments, the whispered vows. Cindy simply shook her head, a silent acknowledgement of the treacherous ground Marcy walked. The universe, in its cruel irony, orchestrated a convergence of fate. On a crisp autumn morning, both Dana and Marcy went into labor. The frantic calls, the rush to separate hospitals, the shared experience of pain and anticipation, all occurring simultaneously, yet miles apart, shrouded in Doug's frantic, desperate efforts to maintain his dual existence. Hours later, two cries echoed into the world. Dana gave birth to a healthy baby boy, her face etched with joy and exhaustion. Doug, beaming, held his son, a sense of overwhelming pride swelling in his chest. "Douglas Ezekiel White here," he declared, his voice thick with emotion sealing his paternal bond. Across town, Marcy too welcomed her son. A fierce, protective love surged through her as she held her newborn close. Guided by a profound, if misguided, sense of destiny and a deep yearning for legitimacy, she too named her son Douglas Ezekiel White Afe. The news, delivered to Doug by a nervous Orlando, hit him like a physical blow. His elation dissolved into a chilling rage. How dare she? How dare Marcy mimic his sacred choice? His marital bliss was abruptly tainted by this audacious act. Orlando, Doug's longtime friend and confidante, observed the storm brewing behind Doug's eyes. He felt a deep unease, an urgent need for truth. "Doug," Orlando began, his voice low, "this has gone too far. You need to tell Dana. Now, before it consumes you both." Doug recoiled, his face pale. "Confess. To Dana. It would ruin everything, Orlando. My marriage, my ministry. Everything I've built." He could not face the collapse of his carefully constructed world. His fear outweighed any moral obligation. In the following days, Marcy's world revolved solely around her son, Douglas Athu, and the elusive promise of Doug's love. Her mother, Pam, a woman weathered by life's disappointments, along with Cindy and Orlando's wife, Angelica, tried desperately to guide her toward a different path. "Marcy, you're a strong woman," Pam pleaded, holding her daughter's hand. "You can raise this boy on your own. You don't need a man who won't claim you." Cindy, ever practical, added, "Made a choice. It wasn't you. Accept it. Build a life for yourself and your son." Angelica, her heart heavy with the weight of Doug's deception, spoke with gentle firmness. "You deserve more than broken promises. Focus on this beautiful child. He is your future." But Marcy remained steadfast, her resolve hardening with each passing day. "He will come for me," he promised. The words, though soft, held an unyielding conviction. She saw only the man who had whispered sweet nothings. not the man who was actively avoiding her. Then Doug appeared at Marcy's apartment, his face drawn, his words devoid of the tenderness she so craved. He came not to fulfill a promise, but to sever a tie. "Marcy, I am not leaving Dana. My vow is to God, to my wife. What happened between us was a mistake. It must end." Marcy's world tilted. The fragile hope she had nursed shattered into a million pieces. A cold, desperate fury seized her. Her eyes, once filled with longing, now burned with a terrifying resolve. "A mistake," she echoed, her voice barely a whisper. "This baby is not a mistake. He is yours, Doug. And if you deny him, if you deny us, I swear I will make Dana pay. I will kill her." The chilling threat hung heavy in the air, a dark prophecy. The following Sunday, a palpable tension hung over New Jerusalem Baptist Church. Marcy arrived pushing a pristine white stroller, her son Douglas Sue nestled peacefully inside. Her presence drew curious glances, hushed whispers. During the fellowship hour, she positioned herself strategically, engaging in vague but pointed conversations about her newborn's father. "He's a good, God-fearing man," she would say, her gaze occasionally darting towards Doug, who stood by Dana's side, feigning composure. "Named him after his father, you know." "A legacy," Doug, cornered by the thinly veiled insinuations, forced a dismissive chuckle. "Yes, she named her son after a truly God-fearing man. It's a common name, a biblical name." His words, meant to deflect, sounded hollow even to himself. Marcy's brazenness, her blatant disregard for his authority in his marriage, pushed Doug past his breaking point. Later, in a secluded hallway, his voice a low, furious hiss, he confronted her. "It's over, Marcy. This charade ends now. I deny paternity. I want you away from me, away from my church, away from my wife. Stay away from my family." Marcy's composure finally fractured. A roar. Visceral rage erupted within her. Her hands, trembling with uncontrolled fury, instinctively reached for a small utility knife she carried in her purse. She lunged, not at Doug, but at her son's stroller, knocking it violently to the ground. Douglas the Surrey's cry pierced the air, a sound of profound distress. Cindy, who had been observing from a distance, rushed forward, snatching the terrified infant from the toppled stroller, her heart pounding with fear and sorrow. Douglas returned home, his mind a maelstrom of guilt and dread. He found Dana in their bedroom, preparing for bed, her face soft in the lamplight. The weight of his deceit, coupled with Marcy's escalating threats, finally broke him. He confessed everything. His affair, Marcy's pregnancy, the shared name, the threats. Dana listened, her face slowly transforming from serene to shattered, her eyes, brimming with unshed tears, narrowed into slits of pain and fury. Without a word, she raised her hand and delivered a resounding slap across Doug's face. The sharp crack echoed in the silent room, a punctuation mark to her devastation. Doug, his cheek stinging, fell to his knees, clutching at her dress. "Please, Dana, don't leave me, please. We can get through this. Just don't tell the church. Please, keep this private." His pleas were desperate, laced with fear of public ruin more than genuine remorse. Dana pulled away, her body rigid with betrayal, her silence a condemnation more potent than any scream. Later, Doug, driven by a twisted sense of obligation and fear of Marcy's erratic behavior, picked her up from the police station where she had been taken after the incident at church. He found her subdued, her eyes vacant, a terrifying stillness about her. He forbade her from seeing Douglas Ather, convinced that this separation was for the child's own good and for his own self-preservation. Marcy, her mind teetering on the brink, lashed out, her words venomous. "This is your fault, Doug. Because of you, our son is in the hospital." Her accusations, though partially true, were colored by her increasingly fragile grasp on reality. Doug, disgusted and overwhelmed, stopped the car on a desolate stretch of road and abandoned her, driving away without a backward glance. That evening, Doug sat in a dimly lit bar with his friends, Orlando and Melvin. He nursed a whiskey, lamenting Dana's unforgiving nature. "She's so cold, so distant. I confessed everything, and she still can't look at me." Melvin, a man whose casual cynicism often masked a darker edge, took a long swig of his beer. "Maybe it's for the best if the baby doesn't survive," he said, his voice shockingly devoid of empathy. "One less complication for you." "Pastor," Doug slammed his glass on the table, anger flaring. "Don't you dare say that, Melvin. He's my son." Even through his self-pity, a flicker of paternal love remained. The news reached Dana at home. Young Douglas Asern, Marcy's son, was in critical condition. She frantically called Doug, but he rejected the call. A cold knot of fear and a sense of maternal duty propelled her to the hospital alone. She sat by the child's bedside, a silent witness to a tragedy born of Doug's lies. Meanwhile, Marcy's mental state deteriorated rapidly. The world around her blurred, replaced by distorted whispers and accusatory voices. She lashed out, tearing at her own skin, the pain a desperate attempt to silence the turmoil within. Cindy, finding her in a state of profound distress, rushed her to safety. A social worker named Tonya, her expression grave, later convened a meeting with Doug, Dana, and Pam. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Tonya delivered the irrefutable truth. A DNA test confirms that Douglas Ather is indeed Pastor White's son. The confession hung heavy, a final, undeniable proof of Doug's betrayal. Marcy was admitted to Jackson Psychiatric Hospital, her grip on reality completely severed. The court, recognizing the volatile situation, granted Doug and Dana temporary custody of Marcy's son, with Pam receiving supervised visitation rights. A fragile peace settled, born from shattered lives. Over a year passed. Marcy, pale and gaunt but with a clearer gaze, was finally discharged from Jackson Psychiatric Hospital. Orlando and Angelica, now the interim pastors of New Jerusalem Baptist Church, met her. Their faces, once filled with concern, now held a guarded sadness. Doug was voted out of the church, Marcy. Orlando explained gently. The congregation couldn't overlook the scandal. "We've taken over the pastoral duties." Marcy's eyes widened, a flicker of something unreadable in their depths. She immediately asked about her son. Angelica, her voice firm, shook her head. "We can't give you any information about him right now. The court order is still in place. You need to focus on your recovery." Days later, Marcy saw Dana at a grocery store. The encounter was electric, charged with unspoken history. Marcy, instead of asking about her son, her true concern blurted out, "How's Doug?" The question, born of a lingering obsession, was a testament to her broken mind. Dana, her face a mask of contempt, visibly recoiled. "How's Doug? I prayed for your death, Marcy. I prayed for it every single day. Stay away from my family. Stay away from my sons." Her words were brutal, raw with the pain and fury of a woman scorned. Later, Marcy waited outside Doug and Dana's home. As Doug emerged, she revved her car, aiming directly for him. He narrowly avoided being struck, the screech of tires echoing in the quiet street. Doug and Dana, shaken, reported the incident to the police and immediately sought a restraining order. Marcy, overwhelmed by her spiraling emotions, returned to her apartment and, in a fit of despair, slammed her head repeatedly against a counter, the voices in her head now deafening. Pam, Marcy's mother, visited her, her heart aching for her broken daughter. "The hospital visitations were stopped for your healing, Marcy," she explained, her voice soft but firm. "They believed it was too overwhelming for you." Marcy, her eyes clouded, fabricated a new reality. "Doug hurt me. He did terrible things." Pam, however, refused to believe this new narrative. "Marcy, Doug never hurt you physically. Don't twist the truth. Your behavior, this rage, this obsession, it will mean you never see your son again." Pam then showed her a photo of Douglas Asuri, a smiling child cradled in Doug's arms. Marcy's gaze, however, remained fixed on Doug's face, her own son a blurry background to her distorted desires. Meanwhile, Dana, burdened by the crumbling facade of her marriage, confided in her own mother. "Doug is no help with the children. He's distant, lost. I can't do this alone." The weight of raising two young sons, coupled with the emotional void of her marriage, pressed down on her. During a gathering with friends, Doug, now adrift in a sea of alcohol and self-pity, fell asleep, slumped over the bar. Melvin, observing Dana's quiet despair, saw an opportunity. His gaze, calculating and predatory, settled on her. He moved closer, his voice a low, suggestive murmur. "You deserve better, Dana. Doug never truly appreciated you." He confessed his attraction, his hand subtly reaching for hers. The touch, though brief, ignited a spark of forbidden desire. Dana, remembering Doug's infidelity, felt a surge of bitterness, a twisted justification for Melvin's advances. Doug stirred, his eyes fluttering open to the intimate tableau. Dana, startled, quickly pulled her hand away, and Melvin smoothly retreated, feigning nonchalance. The moment passed unspoken, but its residue lingered. Later, Melvin, emboldened, texted Dana, "Meet me at the bistro, we need to talk." Dana, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, secretly met Melvin at a dimly lit restaurant. Unbeknownst to her, Cindy, who frequented the same establishment, was also present, observing the clandestine rendezvous from a discreet corner. Dana, attempting to regain control, tried to end things. "This can't go on, Melvin." But Melvin, relentless in his pursuit, pressed closer, his charm a potent weapon. He whispered promises of a life free from pain, a future filled with passion and devotion. Dana, swayed by his intensity and her own yearning for escape, seemed to enjoy his advances, a fragile smile playing on her lips. Then her eyes met Cindy's across the room. The jolt of recognition, the sudden awareness of being watched, brought her back to stark reality. She abruptly pulled away, her composure returning. Doug, his world spiraling into a vortex of alcoholism and depression after losing his ministry, now drifted aimlessly. The loss of his church, his standing, had stripped him of his identity, leaving him a hollow shell. Then Dana, driven by a desperate need for honesty, confessed her affair with Melvin to Doug. The words hung in the air, a final, crushing blow to their already fractured marriage. As she finished, the doorbell rang. Melvin stood on the threshold, a smirk playing on his lips, feigning ignorance. Dana, her confession complete, left the house, leaving the two men to face each other. Doug, his mind reeling, grabbed his children, strapping them into the back seat of his car. In a fit of blind rage and despair, he followed Melvin home. Through the darkness, he watched, a silent, tormented observer, as Melvin and Dana embraced, their forms entwined in a dance of betrayal that mirrored his own. Phil, a mutual friend, later informed Melvin that Doug had discovered the affair. He was in a car accident shortly after. Phil's voice was laced with concern. CPS took the children. Dana couldn't be reached. At the hospital, Dana confronted Doug, her voice laced with accusation. "How could you endanger our children like that?" Doug, his face bruised and broken, retorted, his voice raw with pain. "You want to talk about endangering? You wanted to start a whole orphanage with the congregation." The biting sarcasm underscored the depth of their mutual bitterness. Angelica, appearing like an angel of mercy, offered a lifeline. Tonya, the social worker, will keep the CPS incident off record if Doug seeks help. The church has AA meetings, counseling services. A chance, however slim, at redemption. Marcy arrived at the hospital, her eyes once vacant, now filled with a strange, fervent light. She approached Doug's bedside, her hand reaching out to caress his bruised cheek. "We're soulmates, Doug," she whispered, her voice laced with an unsettling conviction. "It was always meant to be us." Doug, recoiling from her touch, pushed her away. The delusional nature of her words, coupled with the fresh wounds of his own betrayals, repulsed him. Dana, witnessing Marcy's delusional display, made a desperate attempt to salvage her marriage. She broke up with Melvin, her voice trembling but firm. "It's over, Melvin. I need to fix things with Doug." Melvin, his face contorted with anger, stormed away, his possessiveness now fully unleashed. Doug and Dana, clinging to the faint hope of reconciliation, attempted to mend their broken relationship. But the cracks were too deep, the trust too fractured. The memory of Dana with Melvin gnawed at Doug, a constant torment. One night, as Dana slept soundly beside him, Doug's hand reached for a pillow, a dark impulse, born of pain and resentment, urged him to smother her, to erase the image of her betrayal. He raised the pillow, his breath catching in his throat, then stopped, the monstrous act recoiling in his mind. He dropped the pillow, left the room, and uttered a chilling promise. "I'll be back for our sons." Melvin, his anger festering, sent Dana a text message, "Get back with me. We belong together." Dana, her patience worn thin, confronted Doug, her voice laced with indignation. "How dare you ask me to make you lunch after all you've done?" The audacity of his request, after his attempts to suffocate her. Later, Dana met Melvin. He wasted no time, dropping to one knee. "Marry me, Dana. We can have a real life together." Dana, momentarily swept up in the fantasy, felt a flicker of happiness, but the weight of her reality pulled her back. "I can't promise marriage yet, Melvin," she said, her voice softer than intended. Then Doug appeared, a phantom of his former self, his eyes blazing with fury. He lunged at Melvin, a wild punch connecting with his jaw, sending him sprawling. Doug then dragged Dana away, his grip like iron. Melvin, shaken but enraged, immediately called Phil. "He's going to pay for this, Phil. I'm going to kill Doug." At a desolate motel, a final, tragic act was set to unfold. Doug, desperate and deluded, called Marcy, his voice thick with desperation, spun a new web of deceit. "Marcy, meet me. We can start over. As a family. You, me, and our son." An armed Melvin, his mind consumed by vengeful rage, parked outside the motel. He saw Marcy arrive, her eyes gleaming with a manic hope, and immediately informed Dana, his voice triumphant. Dana burst into the motel room, her eyes wide with disbelief, her worst fears realized. Doug and Marcy were entwined, a scene of shocking intimacy. Marcy, her voice triumphant, declared, "He's going to live with me, with us, with our baby." Dana, her voice laced with contempt, retorted, "I don't care about you, Doug. But I refuse to give up my sons." Marcy, her mind snapping, lunged for a gun she had hidden nearby. Doug, in a desperate attempt to de-escalate the volatile situation, finally broke ties with Dana. "It's over, Dana. It has to be." Dana, her face contorted with rage, screamed, "You crazy bitch." The insult, the culmination of years of betrayal and resentment, proved fatal. Marcy, her finger tightening on the trigger, fired. Dana collapsed, a scarlet stain blooming across her chest. Doug, his eyes wide with horror. "Dana, I love you!" The declaration, a desperate cry of a dying love, was his last. Marcy, consumed by a final, jealous rage, fired again, striking Doug. The voices in Marcy's head, now a cacophony of madness, urged her onward. She turned the gun on herself, raising it to her temple, and pulled the trigger. A final, deafening shot. Melvin, having heard the first shot, burst into the room, his own gun clutched in his hand. He surveyed the scene, his eyes wide with shock. He dropped his weapon, rushing to Dana's side, his hand reaching for her lifeless body. Doug injured, bleeding, a desperate plea escaping his lips. "Help me, Melvin!" Melvin recoiled, his face a mask of cold refusal. He walked to the sink, turning on the faucet, and began to wash Dana's blood from his hands, a chilling act of detachment. Doug, his strength ebbing, looked at the discarded gun near Melvin. With a final, agonizing effort, he reached for it, his fingers closing around the cold metal. He raised the weapon, his vision blurring, and fired, fatally striking Melvin.